welcome to the seminar. My name is David Yamato. My colleague and I are all graduate and current student from the Kyoto Seika University. So far as I know, the current and only university with both undergrad and grad school for manga. As a scholar, we spend all our time doing research and writing. It's a really amazing opportunity provided by Satori to share our work to the audience. Once again, I would like to thank everyone working at Satori to provide this space for our presentation. This will be a 4-part recording section with one live section at the end of the program. So if you have any question you would like to ask, we will be answering during the live section. Feel free to leave your question on the comment section. And once again, thank you for joining us, and let's get this started. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to this online webinar. My name is David Yamato, and I will be your presenter today for this brief but hopefully informative introduction to the academic study on manga and anime. This will be a 4-part webinar series presenting with 3 of my fellow researchers from Kyoto Seika University Manga Research Program. With the generous support from Satori, they make this program possible. In this program, our objective is to provide you, our viewer, a basic insight into various ongoing manga and anime research. And we hope with this knowledge, you can too begin to plan for your very own research in this field, or integrate the research work into other academic fields. During each of the 4-part series, each of our presenters will provide you with an introduction to the basic academic method and theories from their respective academic background. The presentation will cover the main manga and anime academic work, the historical background of the research, and introduce you to the research from Japan and around the world, as well as presenting the question and the challenge that are both research field face today. Our goal at the end of this series is to provide you with the following ability to allow you to navigate within the field of manga and anime study. The first is to have the ability to recognize the basic concept and definition within the 2 research fields. The second is to be able to differentiate between the various type of manga and anime classification. The third is to know the basic of who's who within the manga and anime research, and the basic idea behind their works. And at last, it is to provide you with the ability to seek out your own research question within the current research field. And before we move on to our main topic today, first I would like to give you an introduction to my colleague and myself. Our presenter on the second part of the webinar series will be Daniele. Before entering the manga research program at Kyoto, she received her first PhD in comparative literature at Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul in 2014. And in this same year of her graduation, she received a scholarship from the Japanese Ministry of Education, Culture, Sport, Science, and Technology, also known as the Mixed Scholarship, to conduct her research and acquire her degree in manga study. In her presentation in the incoming section, she will be giving us an introduction to the work and theories of key manga and comic researchers from various parts of the world, such as Japanese manga scholar Natsume Fusanosuke, German manga scholar Jacqueline Berndt, and American comic researcher Scott McCall. Coming out next in our third presentation, Julieta will give an introduction to the current state of academic research for anime. In this section, she will be presenting different academic resources from the current anime studies, and also the key research topics that are the focus of this field today. And our 4th presenter in this series will be our fellow researcher Enrique. Before joining us in the manga research program, Enrique received his Bachelor of Art degree from Federal University of José de Foro. Later, also with a mixed scholarship, joined the Seika Manga Research Program, to conduct researching focused on intersection between media study, art, and philosophy. In the fourth presentation, Enrique will be giving an introduction to the current scholarship on media study of manga and the key research topic that are the focus of this field today. And now a little bit of introduction about myself. I am an American researcher and educator who, like my colleague, also a recipient of the MEC scholarship. I received my undergrad degree in studio art, and after that I worked as a public school art teacher and later a museum conservator. Both my education and professional career have been within the fine art field, and I love manga ever since I was a kid. And seeing the increased number of manga exhibition in Japan during the recent year, and also the possibility of manga to change artwork from an exclusive world into one that is more inclusive for everyone. I took on this scholarship to research about history and the relationship between art and manga in Japan. And that concludes our brief introduction to the course and the presenter. Well, let's move on to our first introduction of manga and anime study. In this section, we will be talking about the historical formation of the modern definition of manga and anime in Japan. Before we start traveling back in history, I would first like to start with you and your relationship with these two topics, manga and animation, by looking at some picture here. And see if you can tell what you're looking at, and what will you call that, and what will you describe what you're seeing to another person. Well, the text under the image here are just the source of the image. It is not a guessing game with like right or wrong answer, but rather something I want you to think about how each of us with various culture background related to these Japanese art. Depending on your experience and understanding of the style, art media, and social context, the answer could be varied, such as, of course, manga anime, but also it could be illustration, cartoon, comics, or many other things. From where I came from in the US and most of the English-speaking country, the answer you will likely to get from an average person will probably be anime. Although the history of manga as a print media have existed way before animation, just speaking as a kid growing out in the US in the 90s and 2000, for a long time manga was really expensive and there's a very limited title of what we can get, and for us to get a manga actually requires us to actually go to a bookstore to buy it. Meanwhile, for anime, like what you're seeing here, the for kid TV broadcasting on the TV every day, like show us titles such as Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Shaman King, are most Americans' first encounter with Japanese culture, and it is anime, not manga. And of course, not only kid but parent who watched and brought merchandise of the anime for the kid. The American public become associated with Japanese art style in anime and start applying everything from illustration, manga, game with that style as anime. And this is the recent formation of the concept anime in the US. But what about Japan? What is the relationship between manga and anime here? And what is the root of these two words and where did it came from? As both manga and anime are part of the Japanese visual culture, it is only natural for Japanese art history research to pursue this question. Before anime, there was manga. So for us to get to the root of anime, we must first start with manga. The word on the slide here are all manga, but in different for Japanese writing system. Although it all read the same, the dominant usage of the various writing changed over time. In his research seeking the early formation of the definition of manga, Professor Miyamoto Hirohito from the Meiji University went back to the earliest written record on the usage of the term manga. And in the record brought him back to 17th century Japan during the Edo period. In these records, the earliest usage of the word manga came from actually a biology textbook published in 1709. and it was far from anything near the meaning of manga today, but the name of a bird right here. The next record came from the title of the book of ukiyo-e artist Hokusai's famous book, the Hokusai manga. Although the line artwork plus itself as a print publication has similarity to the manga we know today, Hokusai manga was actually a guidebook or a reference book for the ukiyo-e artists on how to draw different type of things. The modern definition of manga actually began as caricature that was introduced to Japan from the West during the Meiji era, when Japanese began its westernization. French artist Georges Baguette and English artist Charles Wigman were hired to teach Western art to the people of Japan. However, not only did it introduce the Western concept of art to Japan, but also both being cartoonists, they also introduced cartoon to Japan with their own publication. Japanese art historian Atachigen credited the two's work as a shared root of modern art and manga in Japan. Before the two artists, their works to them were still being called caricature and political cartoon. The usage of the word manga to describe these works came later in 1895, introduced by the artist and manga artist Imaizumi Ippyo in the newspaper Jiji Shimbun during this period when Japan was in the process of adopting the Western fine art system. To place both caricature, political cartoon, as well as the satire art and ukiyo-e into this new system of fine art, Imaizumi sums up all the artwork within this with the satirical aspect into the word manga. And from this point, the modern concept of manga was first published. However, the usage of manga remained within the art world. As a technical art word, the usage of the word manga widely to the public only started after 1926 during the Showa period. Although manga as cartoon and caricature continue even till this day, things started to change following the rise of children's manga during the post-war era. Different from the single panel or a short story cartoon in the previous generation, boosting by the popularity of the manga from manga artist Tezuka Osamu's in the 1974, with the story focus and long series manga we are familiar today finally began to redefine the word manga itself. Manga scholar Shimizu Isao described this change between the old manga to the new as from cartoon to comic. Here is the cover of Tezuka's Shin Takarajima. The official website of Tezuka have the English page with the introduction to this manga if you're interested. The concept of manga saw a great change during the post-war era, not only with story manga but also a new development within the field of fine art and design. The new generation of cartoon manga artists experimenting with new way of creation. Artist Ikeda Tatsuo here began his career making social satire for newspaper, same as the generation of cartoonists before him. Yet his experimental expression within his artwork have secured his name in the Japanese art world. The prosperity brought by the sharp economic growth of the 1950s have increased the need of commercial advertisement and commercial art that have mostly been wiped out during the wartime. The high demand of image once done by fine art artists and manga artists had created a new professional field today we know as illustration. Although such a work had long existed before the 50s, it was only during this period we started seeing cartoon that were once being called manga start being called as illustration. Beginning his professional career in this period, we can see the transformation from cartoon to illustration from the work of designer Manabe Hiroshi. During the 50s, most of his work was still being known as manga, but during the 60s, they had all started to change into illustration. So the relationship between manga and anime is linked not only by the shared title and the artists working behind them, but also by the very name we call them. Around the same time when the concept of manga is going over a major change, the very word animation is also introduced. The history of Japanese animation can be traced all the way back to the work of manga artist Shimokawa Oten in 1917. And from that point all the way to the beginning of 1960, the animation film in Japan were actually called manga eiga. It actually means just manga movie. The usage of anime was only showed up after the 60s. And same as the usage of term illustration in Japan, it often gets shortened to irasto. The word anime is also shortened for animation. The specialization and separation of illustration, art, and animation from the term manga, with the remaining story manga or comic become the dominant usage of manga. The manga we know today is finally complete. However, as we have seen earlier with the example from the US, in the ever-expanding culture exchange we are experiencing today, our definition of manga and anime might very well change one day. The change can be small as adopting a foreign word to replace the old one, like what happened in Japan, or it could be significant as manga switched from the definition of cartoon to comic. And that concludes our brief introduction to the historical formation of the modern definition of manga and anime. I hope this information will be helpful for you in your own research within this field. Thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you in the next section. Thank you very much for listening. Please join us in the following section and leave us all your questions below.